made a decision to transcend and to leave darkness behind. And it takes a champion to make that decision. And I really want to speak to the fact that I've had some challenges in the last couple of years myself. Ultimately, I believe that suffering leads to salvation. And in fact, it's the only way.
Now, suffering, please look at it and see. People are capable of suffering just about anything. Is it so? People are suffering their well-being, people are suffering their illness, people are suffering loneliness, people are suffering togetherness. Is it so? People are suffering poverty, people are suffering affluence. Is it so? People are suffering discomfort, people are suffering comfort. Is it so? So they are capable of suffering anything. So obviously, they are creating suffering. Now, if you can create suffering, you can also create something else.
We have to somehow accept and not deny, but feel our suffering and feel our losses. And then we make one of two decisions. We either decide to go through the gate of resentment, which leads to vengeance, which leads to self-harm, which leads to harm to others, or we go through the gate of forgiveness, which leads to grace. And your being here is an indication that you've made that decision already. You've made the decision to walk through the gate of forgiveness to grace, just as Christ did on the cross. He suffered terribly, and he was broken by it to the point of doubt and a feeling of absolute abandonment, which all of you felt. And then there was a decision to be made. And the decision was to look upon the people who were causing that suffering, or the situation that was causing that suffering, with compassion and with forgiveness. And that's what opens the gates of heaven for all of us.
Why we need to depend on other people's compassion and understanding to exist here. Why there's so much misery? If creation had not given you the necessary opportunity to be what you wish to be, then there would be no possibilities, isn't it? Then there would be no such thing as liberation. So why create a bondage and then liberation? Why couldn't you be liberated? Then there would be no creation. Only because there is creation. Now the possibility of going beyond that. You don't see other creatures of the planet suffering like human beings. Their suffering is purely physical. If they're physically harmed, they're in pain. Even in pain, they do not know the kind of suffering that a human being knows. Human being knows this suffering not because creation gave this suffering to you. Creation just gave you the freedom to make whatever you wish to out of yourself. You're making suffering out of yourself, or a large population of the world has decided to make suffering out of themselves. That is their choice. Right now, what human beings are suffering is not their bondage, they're suffering their freedom. If you suffer your bondage, it's all right. But if you suffer your freedom, that's tragedy. Right now, human beings are unfortunately suffering their freedom. This moment, you can make anything out of yourself. You can make joy out of yourself, you can make suffering out of yourself. What to do if 50% of the people or 90% of the people are choosing to make misery out of themselves? That's not creation's fault. Just gave you the freedom so that you could go beyond. Once you have come as human, you are not trapped anymore. Other creatures are trapped in their own instincts. Beyond that, they cannot think. You have instincts for survival, but still you have the possibility of going beyond this instinct.
It's a very strange concept to most people, and especially people that have suffered trauma and have trust issues or whatever, to trust that they can close their eyes for a moment or a couple of moments during the day and let go of the show that's going on in their heads. You know, we are so trapped, all of us, especially those who suffer terrible trauma, to think of that as a real thing. And there is a difference between real danger and imagined danger, and it's hard to turn that off.
You can remember almost your entire life. And using that information, you can project and create what you consider as future. What you and almost every human being is suffering is what is causing pain to them. What is their misery? What is their suffering is just this. These two fundamental faculties which set you apart from every other creature. These two faculties are of memory and imagination. So when you say something from the past comes and grabs me and I suffer, past is not suffering. You cannot suffer the past because it does not exist. Nobody can suffer that which does not exist. What you're suffering is your faculty of memory. What happened 10 years ago, you can suffer. What may happen day after tomorrow, you can already suffer. This does not mean that you're suffering an yesterday or a tomorrow. That's out of question. What you're suffering is your memory and your imagination.
Meditation, for me, and for a lot of people, has been a way to turn that off, and or recognize that those thoughts are just thoughts. And like clouds that cross the sky, they will pass on. And to gently pull yourself back to a place of peace. And just to stop the spiral of thought. Man, we get up in the morning and we open our eyes and show begins, and it's a thriller for some people. And you can't help but get caught up in it. And it's important a couple of times during the day to stop and go, wait, this is just as real as those thoughts. I am bigger than these thoughts. I am bigger than this body. They talk about omnipresence in church, and nobody really thinks about what that means. What it means is every cell of your body is God. Everything is God. Everything is divine.